Hi, welcome to Lasers, Dragons, and Keyboards. I'm Aaron.
I am Liberty,
I'm Josh.
and today we are thrilled to have with us second time guest Tosca Lee. Tosca is the award winning New York Times bestselling author of 12 novels, including The Line Between, The Progeny, Firstborn, Iscariot, The Legend of Sheba, Demon, a Memoir, Hava, The Story of Eve, and the Books of Mortals series with New York Times bestseller Ted Dekker. Her work has been translated into 17 languages and optioned for TV and film. Tosca is the recipient of 3 international book awards: Killer Nashville's Silver Falchion, ECPA Book of the Year in Fiction, and the Nebraska Book Award. Her work has finaled for the High Plains Book Award, the Library Virginia Reader's Choice Award, 2 Christie Awards, and a second ECPA Book of the Year. The Line Between was a Goodreads Choice Awards semifinalist for Best Mystery Thriller of 2019. In addition to the New York Times, her books have appeared in the IndieBound bestseller list and Library Journal's best of lists. She serves on the board of directors of International Thriller Writers and as an adjunct faculty for Drexel University's MFA program. Tosca received her BA from Smith College and lives in Nebraska with her family. A drooling cat named Misty, which honestly, this is the first time I've ever hearing of Misty, but everybody knows and loves 160-pound German Shepherd Timber.
Yeah.
Tosca, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we loved having you the first time, and I don't know why it's
Yeah.
taken so long to have you back again.
Look, we've all been busy doing things.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Lifing.
Yeah. So,
So,
Tosca, you may remember from last time you were on the show, but one thing we like to start off asking all of our guests is, what is your name? What is your favorite color? And I forget the third one. So,
Well, Liberty gets chucked off the bridge today.
I know, I was going to say,
no.
no red.
what is your favorite? Yeah, what is your favorite color? I can't remember the order. We've been doing this too long.
What is your quest?
Oh yes, what
Okay.
is your
I was
quest?
just going to say that.
Well, my name is Tosca. My favorite color is blood red.
Ooh,
And my quest is to entertain readers. I love stories. My quest is to tell great stories.
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, you have a book that came out, what was it, late last year? Why don't you tell us about that
20,
project?
23, The Long March Homes. That's this one back here. And it's this book right here. This is kind of a different book for me. It's a World War II novel. It's the story of 3 best friends who enroll and they joined the army in 1941. 3 best friends from Mobile, Alabama, and they become part of the 31st Infantry, and they're stationed in the Philippines. And by the way, I love this cover because the 4th unofficial best friend here is on the back, and that's Claire, and she's the sister of one of the 3 best friends, and she's the one who's at home, and you can see her with the letters there.
Oh, neat.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, I love this cover. And so this is the story of these 3. I'm going to call them boys because they are teenagers, and they were the same age as my twins when I was working on this book, and they are stationed in the Philippines with the 31st Infantry, and life actually seems really good for them. This was a plum assignment. The Manila was known as the Pearl of the Orient at that time. You could you could you could go to wonderful theaters there, wonderful places to eat. I mean, you could really live it up there. The dollar went far. It was really great for them until the morning of December 8th, 1941, which when I took this project on, what I did not know until I delved into the research for it is that 10 hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Philippines was also bombed and plunged into war. And so for these
Oh,
friends, this becomes now suddenly a fight for survival because if you're familiar at all with the history of World War II in the Philippines, the Allied troops were out provisioned and outnumbered, and and outgunned, and they ended up retreating to the Bataan Peninsula, where they fought on half rations and then quarter rations until April of the following year, until the largest American surrender in history. And for those who had survived that long, that becomes only the beginning of nearly 4 years of POW life. And that POW life begins with what's now infamously known as the Bataan Death March, where all of the POWs, some 60,000 Filipino soldiers and some 12,000 or so American soldiers, are marched 60 miles in 6 days to a POW camp. And if they stopped to try to get something to drink or stop to try to eat, or they stop to help somebody or stop to relieve themselves, because remember, they all have malaria and dysentery and stuff, they were bayoneted or shot or beheaded. And so this becomes a survival story of these three friends who are like brothers. And it's a story of hope and friendship and brotherhood. So that is the new project.
Wow.
Important question, is the Cliff Notes version called The Short March Home?
No, it's not. There is no short version, unfortunately.
So this is sort of a departure from at least what I think of you as an author, being more of a thriller author. How is it different writing this book than some of your other projects in the past?
The only thing that's really different is the subject matter, because World War II is very different for me. I've written speculative, I've written dystopian, futuristic. One of my books is considered science fiction, A Single Light, which is the sequel to The Line Between, which is my pandemic duology, which was considered futuristic until there was a pandemic.
Yeah.
Both books came out in 2019, right before COVID.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and when I wrote those books, the first hot spot in my novels for my pandemic began in Washington State, and then schools shut down and borders shut down and airports shut down, workplaces, and people started wearing masks and using hand sanitizer and stuff like that. And so by the time a real pandemic actually happened, it was very deja vu for me. I did not predict the toilet paper hoarding. Real life is still stranger than fiction. So, but it's just the topic that's different. The actual, research and immersion into character and setting is the same. I will say, though, that it's very different talking about this book with audiences, because so many families have personal ties to World War II, and many have ties to World War II in the Pacific. And so this is very personal for a lot of people who read the book in ways that, say, my story about the Queen of Sheba is not. So.
So, I have a question, but go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, let's see. If you had a question, do you have a favorite scene or character from the book?
Oh gosh, there's
Yes,
quite
huh?
a
Okay.
few. There's quite a few. There's some of my favorites are towards the end that would be spoilerish to give them away, but those are very emotional scenes. I will say that in order to make this book tolerable it's so much war, POW life, all this heavy stuff. So and I wrote this with my friend Marcus Brotherton. And it was his idea to do this topic. And Marcus is probably best known for his World War II nonfiction. And one decision that we made was that every fourth chapter we would go back in time. So this is a dual timeline book. So we leave the war, we leave POW life, we go back in time into the 30s to when these friends are younger and they're growing up and coming of age and doing all the things that kids do. And they're, falling in young love and stuff like that. And that's how Claire enters the picture. And so it was really fun. And it was also a breath of fresh air to go back every fourth chapter and have that reprieve and, just write some funny stuff about, the silly things kids do and how that bonded these kids together in ways that raised the stakes, actually, so that when we return to the present timeline, which is the war, it now seems more pertinent than ever that they have to survive together, because we've seen their long history together and how they've become how they became brothers, even others. And so those were really fun, wonderful chapters to write. The whole thing was wonderful, but those being lighter, where
Mhm.
they gave the levity that you very
Yeah.
much need in a book like that.
Hmm.
Okay. So I suppose along with that, long time readers or followers of you know that for research, you'll get a stack of books. You'll also do a lot of traveling and talk to people. Um, like for something like this, did you get to talk to any people that lived it, anything like that?
I unfortunately no. I think America lost its last baton survivor in, I want to say, 2019.
Mhm.
I believe Ketchum was his last name. The
Okay.
things that were so instrumental to my research for this book, and Marcus has talked to a few survivors, but he started the bones of this book 7 years before contacting me.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Oh,
he had been working on it off and on as a side project for 7 years. So he had that much leeway time where there were still survivors alive. So this is a 12-year project between the two of us, because I added 5 years to the process. I
Oh,
was
wow.
writing the line between and a single light and some other things. But the best resource that I had as far as my research were survivor accounts, and some of those were in
okay.
video format. Some of them were in oral history projects. Um, some of them were put together in a collection of a wonderful, very tough book to get through called Death March, and
Ooh.
and then some self-published accounts of survivors. And I found a very I found a very vivid account written by a man named Joe Johnson, who was a survivor, and he was with the 31st Infantry, and he joined up when he was 14. He lied about his age, and he
Oh,
was stationed in the Philippines, and he became a POW at 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
And his account was so extraordinary,
wow.
with so much vivid detail, that I actually said to Marcus, we need to put our guys in the 31st Infantry, because I just found this wealth of wonderful detail as far as even what these guys ate,
Mhm.
where their barracks was, and the bougainvillea that grew all around the area there, and, stuff like that, that is just a gold mine for authors like me. So those were the sources, and because of that, because of those wonderful resources, even though this book is fiction, everything that happens to the three main characters in this book happened to somebody. Every single thing
Yeah.
happened to a real person. So
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to think about how horrible other humans can be to fellow humans. So,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's interesting to just shy away and go to, science fiction, but then you've got all this other real history and everything. So,
But then you end up in science fiction too, where the emotions are still human, and
oh
and
yeah.
That's
people
true.
are still equally horrible to
Oh yeah.
people. It's,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
think it's
mean,
Yeah.
inescapable.
yeah, I
Well, I
mean,
mean,
even in our D&D session last night, we had, some stuff that was pretty real happening in there,
yeah.
stuff that kind of echoed from home. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely understand. So,
Hmm.
um, so my screen. So, I know you've worked with Ted Decker in the past. How was working with Marcus
Mark, yeah.
different? And was the process a lot different or?
Very different. So when Ted and I wrote our trilogy together, we brainstormed the concept. Our concept was that everyone in the world is technically dead and they just don't know it. So we brainstormed that idea from the ground up. And we started when Ted said, throw some ideas at me. And I was like, what if people don't have souls? What if they don't? And that's where we started. And then we brainstormed this entire world and built it. This was a very different situation because Marcus, as I said, had been working on this off and on between projects. And Marcus is very prolific. You won't see his name on every single book he's done, but he also writes with a lot of celebrities and people like that, like Gary Sinise, for instance. And
okay.
yeah,
neat.
so he wrote Grateful American with Gary Sinise. But Marcus, in between his projects, when he reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think? And I said, yeah, this sounds really important. Let's do it. He did something really unusual that I don't think you're going to hear about, something like this happening often. And that is he handed over his draft and he said, take my baby and do with it what you will.
Wow.
And that's an
Yeah,
immense amount of trust. He's familiar with my work. He's read my books before. So I really appreciated that amount of trust from him and to have that kind of blank check. And with his permission, I did dismantle the manuscript and I rewrote it 4 times. And then I started shuffling chapters back to him. But the book did change. Different parts of it changed. And I added on sections that were not previously there. So it was a very different situation. And actually, I had met Ted on several occasions, but Marcus and I had never met in person. We had only worked in email and had some phone calls, and we met. The one and only time we've ever met was when our publisher bought the book and flew us both to Michigan for meetings, and that is the one and only time we've ever met in person.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a different sort of experience.
Very different. Yeah.
Aaron?
Oh, let's see here. Pretty sure we've asked you this before, but let's lighten things up a little bit. What's your go-to snack while writing?
Stuff that is not conducive to typing.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
Yes.
Buttered popcorn, Cheetos. Yeah, stuff you should not eat and type. Fritos. I love chips. I'm a savory snacker. My husband loves candy.
So what you need to do is just order yourself a keyboard with orange keys. Problem solved.
Well, something. I saw this thing on Facebook the other day. Somebody had these weird little clip-on tweezers on the ends of their fingers.
Yeah, I saw
and they
that.
Were
yeah.
Yeah, the popcorn like this, but then they could keep typing and they weren't messing up their keyboard. And I thought that was genius. So.
Oh yeah. So a question I don't think we've asked you, again, you've written from many different points of view, but what do you find most difficult about writing characters from the opposite sex?
It's weird because I don't even think about it. My very first novel, Demon, was written from a male point of view. The Long March Home is written from Jimmy's point of view. Jimmy is the main character, and it is first person, like so many of my books. And it is present tense, like many of my books are, except for the flashback chapters. Those are past tense, but again, first person. And I just don't think twice about it. When I wrote my book about the Queen of Sheba, I will admit that having spent 5 years in the world of Judas Iscariot, wearing the skin of a first century Jewish man, I was ready to I'll kind of go back to a female perspective. And I was excited for that. But I really just, to me, it's like method acting or role playing. And I don't really think about it. I just do. I just become, and I just write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the funniest things though about it is, especially if you co-author with a male co-author, the assumption is always that the man wrote the action scenes or the heavily plotted scenes or the war scenes, and the woman wrote the romance and the emotional scenes. And pretty much every single time I've written the wars and the battles, fights.
Very interesting.
I've written a lot of wars in my career. And in The Queen of Sheba, I have a war on Camelback even. So,
Quite
a few wars.
Yeah, Josh and I are getting ready to release our first co-written book, and I think I wrote most of the fight scenes in that.
I wrote the first one. You wrote the others.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
it's yeah.
but
It's
So
funny how people will make assumptions. I actually struggle through. I don't mind emotional scenes. I don't mind relational scenes. Romantic scenes are very tough for me.
mhm.
okay.
I can understand that. So,
Mhm.
I
They're
definitely can.
awkward.
They can be,
Can
yeah,
be.
for sure. I I enjoy writing all of it, but it's that muddy middle that gets to me sometimes. So, it's
Yep.
more plot related, so.
Yeah.
Um, so what's something that you edited out of Long Road Home?
Well,
Or Long March Home, sorry. Mhm.
we brought in the input of several editors because this was
Mhm.
such a long process. And we did this. I was between agents. I was between contracts.
Mhm.
We did this without a contract. We wrote it on spec, which in the traditional publishing world means we were not paid for this upfront and contracted for it. So we wrote it first, hoping to sell it. And one important part of history that you need to know about World War II is that the Japanese did not ratify the Geneva Convention, so they did not feel the need to treat POWs in a certain way. And so the accounts of POW life are really atrocious and
Mm.
horrendous. And one of my longtime editor friends who's edited almost every single book of mine went through it and he said, I get it. I get that this is that awful, but at some point, what is too much? And there's a part of me thinking this is not too much because real life was so much worse, and that this is what happened. But on the same hand, you don't want to traumatize your reader. And at some
Yeah.
point, the taste becomes as good as the entire thing, right? So you get a taste, you understand the gist of it, and that's enough. And so there's no need to traumatize the reader who picked this up to immerse themselves and maybe learn something, but also go on this adventure as well. And so that's something we edited out was some of the more horrific stuff
Mhm.
Yeah.
that we just at some point we didn't need it anymore. Not that it was gratuitous, it was just the reader already got it and they already understood, and so we don't need more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So a bit
Uh,
of a weird question here. I've been scrolling through the question list and I found a good one that I hope the answer is no, but have you experienced anything similar to one of the events in the book?
No,
Oh, good.
no,
Cool
I
answer.
haven't. And
Yeah.
even the real life parts, this is we're writing about, they had a completely different experience than someone like me growing up in the 70s and 80s. But also growing up in the South. And one really kind of fun chapter that is in this book happens during one of those flashbacks. And it's this phenomenon known in the Mobile, Alabama area as Jubilee. And that's when the conditions are just right that the fish, a lot of flounder, but even crabs, things like that, need to come up to the surface for air. And so you get this like influx of all this seafood coming up to the
Mm.
surface. I mean, so much so that you could take a skiff out and you can just scoop them out of the water and you can eat really
Yum.
well for several days or a week or what, if you're going to freeze them or keep them. And that was so interesting. And if you've never heard of that, there are YouTube videos of this phenomenon where they show it, to this day where it happens. And it's just really interesting.
Oh, that's
A
really
completely
neat.
different experience than my life here in landlocked
Now I want
Nebraska.
seafood.
Yeah,
I'll
being
leave
in
this with you
landlocked
briefly.
Kansas, I can definitely relate.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a wonderful local source named Sherry, and she does author support for a lot of authors, largely with forensic stuff because she's a forensics expert. But in this case, I leaned on her heavily for information about the area that she and her mother grew up in, and so she's the one who said, "Here's a good location to go frogging, or here's a good place, and the alligators sound like this, and things like that." So it's really great.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
That's got to have been a very interesting part of your research, different
Oh, it
than
was
all of the stuff
so
about the
interesting.
march.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and especially when she said, they could go back behind this house, which is a well-known house, and then, you gotta look up Jubilees, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great, we gotta include that," and,
Oh,
stuff I
yeah.
would never have known about, and even, these are the 2 rival schools, and so there is actually a fight between these friends, and then, members of the football team of the rival school, and they get in a fight together, which actually I had a ball writing, it was so much fun, but, another fight. And she said, that there was a rivalry there. And so that was another really super fun thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so over the years, as we've mentioned, you've written everything from historical to, dystopian, whatever. Um, and I know you're pretty engaged with your readers and your fans and all that, but eh, with how broad a spectrum you write, uh, have your reader or has your readership changed? Like the people that you
Mm.
hear from, week to week, whatever, has that changed throughout the years?
There's new ones coming, with each book. You get new ones every new cycle, basically.
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate in that I've got these super intrepid, wonderful readers who
Mhm.
are pretty much up for whatever the next adventure is. So I'm like, well,
Oh, yeah.
this time we're going back in time to World War II, and no, this time we're going to have a pandemic, and they come along for the ride every time, and I'm really honored and extremely lucky to have their trust in me. They
Yeah.
trust me to take them on an entertaining adventure that will hopefully not traumatize them too much, or whatever. And I've been lucky to have readers that have been with me since my first novel, Demon, came out in 2007, however many years that's been now. So,
What,
not good at math,
18? Yeah.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And they've been with me all those years. So, and then some have come along the way some found me with The Line Between, some found me with this book, and then they go back and read the old books. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And you just had new covers too for several of your
yeah.
books, right?
Ooh.
Right. So Demon and Hava, The Story of Eve, my first 2 novels, uh, they just came out in their 4th editions. And
Yeah.
so they've had many covers through the years, including also the foreign covers. And I absolutely love, I don't have one handy here, but I absolutely love the new covers. Demons is very kind of reminiscent of the original first edition. The Hava cover is extremely colorful and eye-catching and really beautiful, which is exactly what I hoped for.
Very
Yeah.
cool. So,
Yeah.
so the Long March Home was given one book, one Nebraska for 2025. Um,
Yes.
I know you before we got started, you mentioned that a lot of states do this sort of thing, but how is this kind of manifesting itself for you? What does having this honor look
Mhm.
like day to day for you?
It's extremely cool. I mean, it's I've lived in Nebraska since I was 6 years old. I wasn't born here, but my mother's a native Nebraskan. I
Mhm.
grew up here since I was 6, since first grade. And so for all intensive purposes, I am a Nebraska author, and
Mhm.
and so to be among that list for the One Book, One Nebraska authors is a huge honor. It includes authors like Alex Kava and Willa Cather, so it's really cool. Um, at the beginning of the year, I got to go to the Capitol, and the governor
Mhm.
proclaimed the Long March Home, One Book, One Nebraska, for
Oh,
2025.
wow.
I presented him a book, and what it means, though, the really cool thing is that it means getting out into the communities. And many of these communities I've visited as an author or in the past. I used to be Mrs. Nebraska, so I've also been around the state for that as well. But I'm getting to a lot of communities I've never been to. And what I love about it is the libraries are so extraordinary.
Mhm.
And, libraries are so different today than they were when I was growing up. And I would bike to the library in the 70s with
Oh
my
yeah.
tote bag, right? They have so many resources. There's so many exciting things from like 3D printers to
Mhm.
um, I don't know what it's called. You can like emblazon stuff on wood there. They
Yeah.
have everything from different cooking utensils and decorations and
Mhm.
tons of community programs. So it means getting out into the community, but it also means connecting with readers that I have not connected with before. And Nebraska is a state with very patriotic ties, and also families who have firsthand knowledge of these events in the South Pacific. And so it's not unusual for readers to show up to a program I do and say, my father or grandfather served in the Philippines. And unfortunately, you hear the story a lot. They never spoke about their experiences because they were so
Mm.
traumatized,
Yeah.
right? And so they'll come to a book like this book to see what it was that they experienced and to
Mhm.
learn more. And so
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
gratifying thing. I'm kind of on my own for a lot of these. My co-author Marcus lives in Washington State,
Mhm.
so he will video in for some of these, but
Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
ways away.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's me in my car just kind of puttering around.
Mhm.
Drove through a tornado the other day to get to Falls City, Nebraska.
Eek.
So
Yeah, it's been pretty nasty along here
it's
lately.
the Midwest, right? In the
Yeah.
spring.
Right.
So
Yep. So, how far have you driven from your home to get to any of these events across the state? Have you been out to the west side, like Kearney or Cherry County or anything like that?
yes, Kearney, yes. I do get out that way. And then right when this book was coming out, so before it was proclaimed for One Book, One Nebraska, but when I was touring for the book, I did go out to the Panhandle area
Mhm.
for 3 or 4 days. And so
Okay.
ended up just staying out there. So
Mhm.
that's Ogallala, that's
Yep.
Sydney,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Areas that actually figure prominently into the sequel of The Line Between. This book actually
Okay.
takes
Yep.
place out there. And so I blew a few of the local landmarks up in this book.
Yeah, I have
Uh oh.
a good author friend out in that part of the world. You may know of her. Cam Weiland lives out
Ooh,
Scotts Bluff, I believe.
Scotts
Oh,
Bluff, yeah, right
yeah.
out there. Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
So,
very cool. Yeah, that's
yep.
where like the Chimney Rock is out there
Yep.
and all
Yep.
Mhm.
your cool kind of Oregon Trail stuff.
Yep. It's
It's
beautiful out
really
there.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely gorgeous. I love driving out there. I so appreciated being out there. I was brought out there by a kind of a local grant that brings authors out, and so
Okay.
then I drove back through the Sandhills, and it was just beautiful.
Oh my gosh, the
Oh,
Sound
neat.
Hills are just gorgeous. I've driven
They
through
are.
there several times and they're just beautiful.
Yeah. Yep.
See, Aaron has the Sleeping Bear sand dunes.
Lots and lots of water.
Lots and lots of water. Where are you, Aaron?
Michigan, right in the middle of
Oh,
the state.
Michigan. Oh, sure. Gotcha. Yep.
It's all fresh water, so we don't have the fun stuff like Jubilee and the seafood. But we have lots of fish though.
But it
Bluegill,
looks
trout.
like it looks like. I mean, it looks like the ocean.
Oh, it does. It's
Well,
it's kind of fun. You take somebody who's never been to the Great Lakes before, but they grow up on the seaside, and you take them out to the lakes and like, this is the ocean. It's like, yeah, no, no, it's not.
No,
It looks like it though. Water as far as you can see in three directions,
right.
but
It is right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Aaron?
oh, let's see here. Let's find a good one. Maybe a weird one.
No,
Da-da,
no.
da-da.
That's us.
That's not. If I'm trying to find something really, really weird, where's our random roll questions? Those are fun.
First
I
page.
Uh,
asked that one
first page.
already.
Yes.
Oh, that's always a fun one. What three authors would you sit down with for a monthly lunch? And
Oh
living, dead,
gosh.
anything.
You know, she's not alive anymore. I always admired Anne Rice's writing. And
Yeah.
I if you read Demon, one of her Limousine's license plates has a cameo in Demon. She
Oh,
used to have two limousines, and the license plate on one was Cherubim, and the license plate on the other was Seraphim. And
Mhm.
I mentioned this briefly in Demon, and I wrote to her to let her know, and she thanked me and she congratulated me on my first novel, and she was so kind.
oh, neat.
I have met her son, but I never had the opportunity to meet her. I always found her fascinating. I always appreciated her research. I appreciated her questions and her questioning. Um, I have a lot of just author friends that I don't get to see very much, and if I could just have a
Yeah.
rotating list of friends, I mean, if you guys lived closer, we could eat lunch. I've
Oh
got a
yeah.
friend named
3-hour
Andy,
drive for us. So
3 hour drive. Yeah.
That's,
I've got a
that's
friend
short for you guys. I
Andy
mean,
Kaufman who lives in San Diego. I've got a good friend of ours named Don Bentley. He writes the Mitch Rapp books for the Vince Flynn uh, Legacy series
oh,
now.
I
Wonderful guy. Um, Brian and I love getting together with the Andrews and Wilson guys whenever we're at events together. I mean, it's always just a joy. And also my friend Nicole Bart, who lives over in Iowa next door. It's just so it wouldn't be exactly the same people every time.
And
It's just
that makes
nice to
sense.
get together with authors sometimes and to get to chat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
um
Oh.
I think we'll ask a couple of writing questions and then wrap up because it's getting to be almost 8 o'clock here. Tosca, how important are book reviews for authors, you
Mm,
think?
they are extremely important. Now, there's two different kinds of reviews. There's
Mhm,
industry reviews, so your publisher's weekly, book list, library journal. Those are
mhm,
extremely important as a book is coming out, as far as your
Yeah.
marketing, stuff like that. Um, but book reviews from readers who are willing to take the time to go on to Goodreads and to go on to vendors like Amazon and Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and leave even a short review, or it's so immensely helpful. Um, it's incredibly important, very important.
mhm.
hear it, everybody.
Yeah. Even
If you've
if
read
you
any
don't
of our
love it,
books, go out and review them, please.
yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever had a review that you've read that, or if even if you do read reviews that has kind of left a lasting impression with you that you think about every now and then?
There was a reviewer early on who I was very fortunate in my reviews from the beginning, but you're always going to have
Mhm,
those 1 stars, or the people who just don't get you, or they
mhm.
don't get your writing, and they're not your people, and they're
Right.
not your audience. And I'll never forget one of my first 1 star reviews. Somebody said that my book, what Demon, was written with the intelligence and wit of an inebriated 2-year-old.
Oh.
Wow.
And you
That's
know what that taught
harsh.
me? Yeah, and it just taught me that there's a difference between a reviewer who says, "This book was not for me,"
Mhm.
Yeah.
"I didn't love it," versus somebody who doesn't love it and they're mad. And some
Yeah.
reviewers are like that, but,
Oh, yeah.
I always tell authors, beginning authors and aspiring authors, that when you get reviews or criticism like that it's really more of a reflection of where that person's at than it is about your writing. So I
Mhm,
really try to only read, pay attention to the ones that are helpful
mhm.
as opposed to the
Yeah.
people who are angry.
Yeah,
So,
it's one thing if they say,
That
"Hey, I
makes sense.
didn't like it because this, and this. Another thing,
right,
oh, rah, 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 rah. It's like you didn't even really say anything about the book. And yeah.
right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, honestly, I think to make it as an author, you have to have ridiculous reviews. That's just
You
part and
have to.
parcel.
Well, and it's not
Right,
just
and you
you
can
either. I
go.
mean, you can go out on Amazon and look up your favorite book of all time. I guarantee you there'll be at least one star review.
Oh yeah.
And every now and then, just for comfort, I will look up a book that I thought was a great book. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
look, even this great book has some haters.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's if you don't have some of those, then it looks suspicious, honestly.
Yeah,
Right?
you're
You're
right.
not wrong.
Yeah.
So, uh, so what is your next project, or what are you working on now? Can you
Or
give any
light
hints?
reading.
Uh-huh, sure.
Uh-huh.
One of these days I'm gonna write something light, I promise. I'm
You should
working on
challenge you should challenge yourself to write a rom-com.
oh no.
Which is correct, Tosca.
So you make it fun, like a rom-com in space or
That's space.
something weird like that, you know?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, you
no.
could take a page out of Carrie Neats's book,
I was
Amish
just thinking
vampires.
of him up with like rom-com in space. I was like, ah, I don't know if you'll ever see a rom-com from me, but I never say never because my next project does have actually a pretty romantic storyline to it. I'm writing a story about the medieval witch hunts in Europe, the European witch
Ah,
hunts.
okay.
Yeah. So
That'll be
Very
interesting.
yeah, and those witch hunts lasted roughly 200 years and killed. Some people say 25,000, some people say 60, some people say more, mostly women.
Mhm.
Yep,
And it it killed a lot of people. So,
it did.
When do you anticipate having that book out?
well, I sure wish I knew that answer. It's not contracted, which is the
Okay.
problem, and I write really well on deadline. So,
Fair enough.
I I need to get my agent something this summer. So, hopefully a year
Okay.
after that or
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we'll keep our eyes peeled and we'll have to have you on when that one comes out.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's you know, yeah, it's thick going. I will say that the research and everything is very thick. So
I bet. Because
It's a
honestly, I've never
process.
heard of that, but it doesn't surprise me. But it
yeah,
sounds
most
fascinating.
people haven't heard of it. Yeah, I mean, we've heard of Salem and 19
Uh,
people died.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. I'm sure the research for that has been just dark.
it's dark, and also we're talking about this area that is, a lot of Germany actually, and in Germany, researching Germany in the 15th century is, it's parts of it are very obscure, and so it's a whole different thing.
Mhm.
I
But
believe it.
every time you research some new period or history or whatever, it brings its own terrors with it, right? So
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
Germany,
Josh is.
like where the Black Forest and my ham comes from?
yeah, right. That's exactly right. That's Hansel and
Well
Gretel
played.
territory over there. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So
Well, Tosca, it's about time to wrap up. So, where can our listeners go to find out more about you and your books?
well, you can go to toscalee.com. So it's TOSCALEE.com. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram. Honestly, most people go to my social media to see my dog, Timber,
He's
and
so
yeah.
cute, though.
my husband, Farmer Brian. But I will occasionally, like, poke a post about a book or writing in there too. So,
Mhm.
but I think people go for dog pictures, honestly.
I'm not
Hmm.
going to
That's
say
part
I
of
don't, but I'm not going to say I
yeah.
do.
See, that's just
It's
part of
fine.
your marketing.
Yeah, he's a giant German Shepherd. He weighs 160 pounds, and he's kind
Ooh.
of like worth his weight in social media gold. So,
He's getting
So
up there, though, isn't he? He's had a couple of surgeries.
yeah, he had a couple ACL surgeries, and he's now, I think he's
Hmm.
7 now.
yeah,
For big dogs,
sounds
Yeah,
that's
about right.
getting up there. So,
he's getting up there. Yeah, yep.
you know,
But yeah, he's funny as ever.
Yeah. Maybe I need to
So,
post one of pictures of timber on your podcast notes.
There
Oh,
you
you
go.
should.
yeah,
So, well, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight, Tosca. It's been a blast. We love having you. We need to have you on
Thank
again
you.
soon.
Thank you
yeah,
for having me back. Thanks. It's great to see all you guys. Thank you.
Yep.
yeah.
Great to have you. Yeah.
Yep. So, Josh, do we have anybody coming up soon?
Well, we've had to do some jigs with scheduling. We're still trying to get Morgan Bussey on. We're going to have Wayne Thomas Batson on,
Mhm.
and in 2 weeks, on May 10th, we have author Alyssa Hazel, who writes dark-ish sci-fi with a spring of hope.
Okay.
So,
So everybody needs to be sure to listen in then. You can find us on all of our regular channels, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Twitch, YouTube, all those good channels. If you have any suggestions for guests, be sure to send it our way, lasersdragonskeyboards.com. And I think our email is lasersdragonsandkeyboards@gmail.com.
That
And then
sounds
you
right.
can, and then you should be able to message us on Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter. Although I
yes.
think I need to
Whatever it's
find the
called now.
password for that one again. Yeah. So,
So,
um, go buy everybody's books. Tosca's book, Aaron's book. Josh and I have an anthology launching on Thursday with our writing community. 9 authors, 11 stories. It's going to be awesome on Kickstarter. So go check that out. I don't have the URL handy, but check all of our social media. It's listed there.
yes.
Um, Otherwise, I don't have anything else. Do you, Aaron?
Nope. See everybody later.
Oh, okay. See ya. Thanks,
All
Pushing the
Tosca.
right.
big button.